Welcome to another edition of Consensus Unreality. Before we get to tonight's interview, I'm going to ask you to check out patreon.com/consensusunreality. For just $5 a month, you can access our full episode archive, 5 years worth that's only hosted there. Regular exclusive episodes, which are ongoing, written content, a Discord server, and if you join our print tier club, you get access to our printed Journal of Shells, plus other printed and recorded materials in the mail. That's really cool, so check that out. Thanks for listening. As always, enjoy the episode, and there's an extra hour bonus on the back end only on patreon.com/consensusunreality.
Yeah, it gets a little weird, definitely.
That is horse. Okay, I'll start. Welcome to another episode of Consensus Unreality. We're joined today by Tanner Boyle, the curator and writer behind the Getting Spooked Substack podcast blog industry. And we're kind of continuing our episode from last week, although kind of taking it in some other directions. If you didn't catch us last week, we were talking about Don Elkins, Carla Ruckert, and the Law of One material, how that intersects with the UFO story, things like that. And we've both been fans of your work, Tanner, so thanks for joining us. Do you have a favorite channeler?
Favorite channeler? Oh, that's a good question. First of all, thanks for having me.
Of course.
I'm also a big fan of Consensus Unreality.
Ooh.
I've been listening to you guys since you started. Let me just
Oh,
put that
shit.
out there.
oh shit.
I was
Nice.
off the wagon for a while, and I just recently came back. And it's really good to hear your guys' perspective, because I feel like my stuff can tend to be a little dour, is the word I would use, and that really doesn't fit like how I perceive the subject matter exactly, because I think it's very colorful and I think it's very interesting, and I do think it has like positives, and if someone were to read my Substack, they might not think that I feel that way. But my favorite channeler, I would have to say, is probably George Van Tassel.
Mm.
Nice.
Because I feel like that is sort of an unproblematic fave, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. No, he seemed like a good guy, which is not often the case. With great responsibilities comes great being a freak or whatever. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
when like other people took his stuff and kind of took it directions that
Mm.
was not unproblematic, but I think he himself never really did anything that I mean, if someone told me, I would be very upset about it, but I've never heard anything.
I'm sure you have a good perspective on this, but there was certainly an FBI file on Van Tassel. Was that just kind of fears and concerns of, post-McCarthyism?
Yeah, well, honestly, more contactees than you'd expect had like FBI files. There were a lot of like, I remember reading like Adamski's like bulky FBI file, and they're like informants and saucer groups and things like that. And it kind of brings into perspective just like how those like intelligence operations function, whether it be, like domestic or elsewhere. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think I go back and forth. I think it was like a fears of communism, but what's shocking is that so many of them weren't exactly communists. Some of them were approaching that, but some of them went the exact like opposite direction, the other hand entirely.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, yeah, big time. Um, yeah, I'm reading American Tabloid right now. Have you read that by
I,
Elroy?
oh, I haven't. No.
It's like a, but anyway, there's like a uh, FBI guy who's tasked with like breaking into and observing communists like houses, and it's so funny because it's just like how much they spent on donuts for their meeting. Like, and I feel like the guy who got the contactee like tailing job probably had more fun.
Yeah, you
Right.
either hate it or love it.
Uh,
Well, I also wonder if like you have people in that group who basically like report to the FBI but are like active members. And
hmm,
I wonder if it wasn't like like if it was more of an asset situation than like a well, they're already in it, so we can ask them questions and
sure.
uh
Well, like
Mm.
Bill Moore, right?
right, sure. Yeah.
But that was
I
later.
wonder how early on that goes. Couldn't exactly say, but given how monitored the saucer groups were, I do wonder about it.
It's-
What? Yeah, I can't even really figure out why. Is it just like the revolutionary potential of or is it just because it's so useful for cultural, you know, concept production? I just don't know why the resources would be sunk into whatever those groups were doing.
That's a question I find myself coming back to basically at any point in UFO history. Like why UFOs? And I recently I kind of came to the conclusion that it's a bit of like a multi-tool. It's many
Yeah,
things at one time. And it has different levels of utility to different factions in the military. And I think back then it would have been like a pretty useful like red baiting thing. Um,
mm.
like I have to imagine the average American didn't know what like communist propaganda actually sounded like. So you get people in these contactee groups talking about like love and light and community and things like that. I'm sure it could be like mistaken like that. I don't know what communism is, but I'll know it when I see it kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah, even like the nuclear disarmament element of the contactee movement could be read as communist propaganda, or like even like a
Mhm.
joint space program kind of thing, which apparently is one of the things that people think got Kennedy killed, right?
Right. Yeah, well, and I think that like nuclear disarmament thing surprisingly like sticks around because even in like the 80s when you have Scott Jones, who's like the aide to Senator Pell, I think it's Claiborne Pell, and he's basically going around and interacting with every single paranormal and UFO group you can imagine. Um, his reasoning is never exactly clear to me. Um, there's also Rockefeller money involved, I believe.
Mm.
But I bring that up because both he and John Mack, were involved with like nuclear disarmament stuff before the UFO uh, blah, 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 UFO abduction stuff came to the forefront.
That's really interesting. It's funny you say that, because that who is it that we were talking about recently, Ben, that was early in on the CE5 stuff and was a surgical doctor, and
oh,
he met
Burke,
Stephen. Yeah,
yeah,
what's his first name?
Joe Burke.
Yeah. So this is like CE5 protocols in like the late 80s, early 90s, and he actually met Stephen Greer threw a physicians against like nuclear arms thing, I believe, like something like that. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
It just to prove that I'm an active listener, was this the person that Ben was friends with on Facebook at some point?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
Gotcha.
devil's in the details. Ben's
It was
Right.
back from my like, like Paula Harris.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I was like, when I was like, I don't know, 20, I was like doing all this research into Michael Wolff, Catchers of Heaven fame, and
Mm.
as like anyone had ever talked about him anywhere, I was like, I need to be friends with this person. I need to know what the hell's going on. And somehow that led to like being friends with all these UFO culture people on Facebook, and they've kind of since you know been spread in the wind to wherever it is they go.
Right.
Um, but Paula's interesting because she did that huge book with Valet, and
Yeah.
then it got pulled, and now it's back again. Um,
Kind
I
kind of a
guess,
big controversial one.
yeah, people hated it. They're like, this is dumb.
It was what?
But the people thought it was dumb. They were like, there's no proof.
Well, so in my in my work, I've been reading through his diaries, and I
Yeah,
find him an immensely fascinating person. And he's
totally.
always in the middle of some nonsense, which is
Yeah.
it's not what I aspire to, but I at least like to hear about it secondhand.
Yeah, we
Um,
definitely wanted to ask you about your reading through the journals and stuff because that's a big that's a big task that I'm like, I'll do that someday, but I probably won't.
yeah. Well, I feel like I could if I didn't stop to write an article every once in a while, I could actually get through it pretty quick. It's fairly breezy reading. Um, I think maybe doing it in chunks like I do is actually beneficial to like taking stuff in, remembering it. But yeah, sort of along the lines of the Trinity Crash book that he wrote, there are certain cases just like people are acting like he's changed, and I don't know that he's changed all that much because there were certain cases back in the day where he would have an opinion on it. Like I think of the Frank Fontaine abduction is one that he was just like totally obsessed with, and he thought it was like a government operation. And like the average person just thinks that that was a hoax. One of the witnesses admitted it was a hoax. Uh, kind of a lot of like incongruent details. And I feel like Trinity is probably something like that, where like despite the incongruent details, he feels that there's a story there.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I do I do wonder, but that didn't really answer your question,
Hmm.
but
I've been
No,
really
I don't even know the question anymore.
I've really been enjoying that on your Substack as well. Everything. I mean, it's a very prolific uh, place that you've built on Substack, which is pretty amazing. But yeah, I've been enjoying that a lot because I feel like it's a really interesting perspective on things that have been mythologized.
Mhm.
And I'm talking about Valet's journals, obviously, but it's kind of got me thinking about something that I did want to ask you about in terms of what we're seeing now with like the power brokers of disclosure, like the Soul Foundation, do
Mhm.
and like even like the Telian kind of like podcaster element getting involved, and the Pasolka UFO God thing. Do you sort of see like, or do you sense like a changing of hands of the UFO thing, like the way that it's being presented? Because Valet gets me thinking about Silicon Valley and Silicon Valley's influence on the question and how power might be moving in that direction the privatization of possibly
Hmm.
exploring this stuff and prospecting whatever the hell UAP technology is.
Hmm.
Um, and thinking about like SRI and Esalen, that stuff's always been there. But do you kind of see some like shifting away from maybe like DoD vaults into the hands of like technocrats or something?
I I think that's probably accurate. I remember there being a lot of like, do you guys remember this app called Enigma Labs coming out?
Oh yeah, I
There was
still
like
get
Yeah.
report,
notifications. Definitely.
yeah, something's off with that.
Yeah.
But I think there is like a move to uh privatize it. I think TTSA was probably like the point of no return as far as like trying to privatize the like UFO industry, whatever that is. And they've basically turned into like an entertainment
Hmm.
venture, which I guess is uh probably where you'll wind up without government contracts. And I know they had some initially, but those must have fallen by the wayside. Um and in general, I do think that is like one of the goals. I think a lot of the people involved in these organizations have like a genuine interest and like a genuine desire to solve like the UFO question. Um, but at the end of the day, they also have to make money, and UFOs do not make money unless you can sort of get like a defense contract to act like like the unknown aerial threats, which could be anything from a drone to a UFO. And we sort of saw with the like drone stuff in New Jersey
Mm.
recently, even the Chinese spy balloon, like that stuff was taken on by like UFO Twitter, and I just couldn't
Yeah.
understand it.
I couldn't either. Yeah.
Um, and I just think like maybe that was like partially the intention was like building this like subset of the population to um, basically back defense spending for other kinds of threats in hopes of solving the UFO issue.
Mm.
But there's
Yeah.
probably a lot of moving parts that I try to grapple around, but there's a lot of disparate threads
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
look at.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting to see like which pillars are rising where, because when you mentioned the New Jersey drones thing, to me it seems like that was some kind of like test, maybe exposing
Mhm.
weaknesses in our radar mesh, which is like, if you've been listening to the show, if I've ever talked about the disclosure hearings, like that's all I can hear is like Marco Rubio being like, we need a full radar mesh. Like there's fucking adversarial drones. That's all I hear basically with that. So there's certainly that on that side. But then like the conversation is shifting back towards this, um, the Collins Elite thing, but not just in that group. Like even it's so religious, and the religious thing of like angels and demons seems to be like coming up everywhere now. And I don't know if that's just because there's nothing real tangible to lean on. So it just goes back to that, what we already know. Do you see like that as well?
Yeah, I sort of see it like that. I went to a MUFON conference. Well, it wasn't technically a MUFON conference, but uh it would take too long to explain basically. But I was shocked at how many people there were promoting that line these days that UFOs are angels and demons. If you pray, you won't get abducted, things like that. Uh, and I do wonder if they're like just trying to tap into like an evangelical subset. And I mean, that's partially confirmed by Tucker basically saying, "Yeah, I got attacked
Right.
by a demon." Also, I believe that UFOs are angels and demons. And I think there's also a way in which sort of bringing it back to Silicon Valley tech guys, we're seeing like a growth of like an AI religion as well. Like a lot of people view it that way. And I think there's like a mixture that's sort of slowly forming of like a religion of technology. Because even like UFO religiosity is sort of like a religion of an unknown technology, and an AI is it's like a known technology, but the conception within that sort of like religious belief is like an AI that doesn't yet exist. Uh, like all the
Right.
Mm,
Silicon Valley tech bros are super into Roka's basilisk
hmm.
these
Yeah.
days, which I can't wrap my head around like why that has caught on so much. Uh, but I'm thinking that those two things have to be somewhat in alignment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have written down Savior Tech, and it feels like if anything, it's just useful for technocratic oligarchs to have you like put some sort of faith in the technology that they're building and working with. Like if it's not
Yeah.
useful even just beyond that, you
Hopefully we're not entering like a broad like Randy Kramer medbed situation.
know. Did you read the newer Pasulka book Encounters?
I did, yeah.
Because I felt that there was like I liked parts of it, and I find her fixation on Desjardins pretty interesting. And he's
Mhm.
a super interesting figure to consider in a lot of different things. But there did feel like an element of spiritualizing the intelligence community
Mhm.
and Silicon Valley for sure, right?
Yeah, I wrote like a pretty lengthy review on it. And this was I was a pretty big fan of American Cosmic at the time, but I've since gone back and reviewed it after getting into the whole Chris Bledsoe thing, and I have more questions now than I did back during the initial read through. But basically, any of her interactions with Timothy Taylor have always rung like a multitude of alarm bells for me. Because he was also doing very odd, feels like psychological operations with Bledsoe. And I'm speculating there, but
Hmm.
um, there's a lot of like performative, like you are the most talented individual to ever see a
Yeah.
UFO in all of history kind of thing. Um, and I think there was also that kind of theater with Pasulka. And I do wonder just uh like what his angle is. Because I also read his book. He had self-published the book, and I don't think that many people have read it. It's
Hmm.
basically like a guy who worked at NASA and was also a businessman. It has nothing to do with UFOs, which is
Yeah, it's like a
very
business
odd.
book, right? Yeah.
Yeah, basically, it's kind of a business memoir
Yeah.
type thing. And uh, some of the stories he would tell Pasulka, which would be like, I mean, the one everybody knows is that he would do like protocols and get like ideas for biomedical technologies.
Downloads, as it were.
Downloads, yes.
Yeah.
In the book, he describes basically the same process of, I think even the same technology that he described as getting downloads for. And it's not like that at all in the memoir. It's like typical, like I had this idea. I contacted my friend who's a doctor to see if he could put it together. And it just has me wondering. And then that the line that really bugs me is like the hierarchy of beings. Do you know what I'm
Re
talking about?
refresh me.
So in the hierarchy, you have like NHI at the top, at, and I can't remember if there's like angels or something in between that or above that or something. But basically, the part that I is a sticking point with me is that members of the intelligence
Hmm.
community, certain members, are higher than the average human
Right,
being in
right.
this hierarchy.
Troubling.
Yeah, and I just wonder because like I like with him being like one of her main sources, I'm wondering about like his vision of the phenomena being too influential on how like religious studies kind of looks at the UFO issue. Um,
Yeah.
because I think that's a dangerous way of thinking
Mm,
to put intelligence communities there.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
that's where it felt very suspect, especially in the new one. Because it felt like there was even more emphasis on that in Encounters, and it's interesting to hear like the push of Bledsoe's stuff. You did kind of hear that the lady and the UFO
Mhm.
like echoed in. I'm just gonna call him the Eggman because I forget his name already. But the recent,
Jake Barber.
yeah,
Yeah,
The Eggman.
yeah, yeah.
the
I am the
Eggman.
Eggman.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of echoing some Bledsoe stuff pretty directly, in my opinion, right?
Yeah, it almost felt like he was cribbing it as someone who kind of likes looking at Bledsoe. I was like, oh, I've heard all this before, and it's not as interesting the second time.
Yeah.
Uh, and it was interesting though, because he was kind of a mixture of Bledsoe and Stephen Greer's like C5 stuff.
Totally.
Well, at least that was my understanding of like the psionic, uh, whatever they called it. It basically functions like you get into a state and you're able to um, summon a UFO. But of course, Bledsoe claims that he can do that as well. Um, and yeah, I don't know what to make of that one. What I can't remember. What did you guys think of the video?
Which one?
I don't know. It
The
doesn't.
egg.
It literally
Oh,
looks
the
like
egg.
an egg in a Tupperware or something. You know, like looks like an
Yeah,
egg with a strip of duct tape around it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was not moved, but
Yeah.
well, I was kind of moved. I do like liars, and like in this field at least,
Yeah.
I think that it's beautiful. It's kind of like he's trying to like create a new myth and isn't very good at it. So there's kind of like I have an empathy for that.
For
But
yeah, for what it was putting out there, the video evidence was not compelling enough. That's what I would say at best.
yeah,
But it's
Yeah.
like we could talk about some of the language too, because I've heard you talk and seen your writings about some of this stuff, and there's cagey language in this recent stuff, and that's obviously intentional. But
Mhm.
when they say crash retrieval of and using I don't know terms like non-human intelligence or biologics, like those are clearly can be applicable to a lot of different things, especially just like yeah, we have crash retrievals of
Yeah.
what like adversarial planes, or it's not
birds.
specified at all.
Yeah, well, with
Yeah,
biologics too, that's mostly like a pharmaceutical or
yeah, it's
biomedical
weird.
It's a
term. Wait,
scientific term for like a zero G like superconductor kind of too, right? Like it's I
I'm
was
not 100% certain, but I do know that Tim Taylor, not to bring it back to
exactly,
him,
yeah.
because he used that in an article that Pasilka had published, I think before American Cosmic.
Yeah.
Uh, so obviously, I wonder if like I always wonder about the game of telephone. Uh, because
Yeah,
reading Valet's journals too, you can see like I recently wrote an article about basically like Ron Pandolfi and Kit Green, who are both CIA analysts who sort of get involved with UFO stuff from time to time. And there's this one instance where I think Kit Green started the rumor that Valet had seen alien abduction or alien autopsy footage in Brazil. And that made its way to Ron Pandolfi, which then went to Dan Smith, which then went to someone else who I can't remember, and then went to Valet's friend Fred Beckman, and then to him. And I wonder how often like things get like laundered through rumor. And I also see that is why the UFO community could be so useful as sort of like a, like an infosec
Mm.
yeah,
test.
yeah. They're good at it for sure. And I guess when anyone feels like they have the final world breaking secret about the
Mhm.
truth of like alien life, it's a very dynamic like gossip uh vehicle to carry
Mhm.
maybe something else. Like it's almost like some kind of crazy cryptographic thing it could be, you
Yeah.
know. Not
Yeah,
that it
well,
is, but I like that. That was a cool.
I mean, I wouldn't put it like past like some of these things. Like I've always wondered about Serpo being something like that. In fact,
Sure.
like I think Kit Green even said like some of the information could have been useful for some people, and it looks like what did he mean by that?
Mm.
Yeah,
Uh,
Serpo is weird. And all of the stuff from that era particularly is of interest to me, like the early internet type stuff.
mhm.
Even before, even with like with the MJ12 documents and their uh, provenance and life, seeing who they get to and like where they spread, following it, it almost feels like using some kind of dye to track the movement of a liquid or something. You can kind of like
Yeah,
see how this ecosystem functions. Um,
yeah. See, and that's what I find interesting about well, because what like while I'm interested in like unexplained phenomena, I am like I was originally like a Fortean type of
Mm.
yeah,
guy, but I've since moved into the study of like these like subcultures
sure.
because I don't have all that much interesting in terms of like thinking about like what are UFOs? I couldn't answer that question, but I can tell you what the people in the UFO subculture are doing and how like it might be useful to the military or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I feel like I'm split evenly down the middle in terms of because the subcultures and the characters within it are so interesting, even when they're not being like used as uh, carriers of like information stuff. They're um, they're often just like such strange kind of folk characters,
Mm.
which is kind of where I come to it at this point. But at the same time, there's no denying the fact that they're also kind of they have like a power to them that is very useful.
Hmm.
They're tapped directly into at least some people's desire for there to be a grand revelation, and that's a very powerful uh, well, and at least especially America, it is. It's a
Yeah.
very millennialist culture we have.
Yeah. No, it absolutely is.
Yes.
Yeah,
In our last episode, we were looking at Don Elkins and Carla Ruckert and the Law of One. And it definitely reminds me of two of the major um, pieces that you've talked a lot about on other shows, which is the Gulf Breeze 6 and your piece is Saint Peter and the Sonic Drive.
Oh, right. That's a throwback, but yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Um,
I love those guys.
yeah, those are excellent, and there's something about like that I get interested in. I think Ben and you as well of like questing with UFO stuff when people, and it's in the Van Tassel stuff as well. I mean,
Mhm.
he got directions to build the Integratron and built the damn thing. Like that's kind of fits into this questing arena as well. But there is something incredible about people who are led on these journeys and follow it geographically and spiritually. I thought that was kind of maybe a good territory to enter into if you wanted to kind of maybe you don't really have to go over those things in depth because maybe you're tired of it or something, but maybe some
Oh
points
no.
or parts of that stuff that kind of pulled you in and that stuck with you maybe.
Well, first of all, I could never tire of the Gulf Breeze 6.
It's pretty cool.
I've spent so much time with that subject that uh, I hold it very near and dear to my heart. It's basically like six military intelligence guys and one girl. They start receiving messages on a Ouija board from various saints, and I'm always so bad at remembering the saints, but I'm pretty sure Saint Paul, Simon, and you'll have to get back to me on some of the other. Timothy. Timothy was another one. Uh, and eventually they're given like information that the Antichrist is coming back to Earth, kind of like the millenarian thing you're talking about. And only they can stop it, but they have to return to the States. And basically, their instruction is to go west. I've seen their final destination listed as like Wyoming, Colorado, somewhere in the west. And they all go AWOL from their posts at a highly sensitive military installation, like a listening post in West Germany, and they aren't located for, I think it's like a week or something like that. And when they are, it's like a big deal because military analysts don't go AWOL that often, let alone six of them all at the same time without much in the way of notice. Um, and basically, I was like looking into it, trying to get to their motivations. I went into it expecting it to have some sort of element of like a psychological operation, because I think that's what Vallet's sort of landed on with it. And the longer I spent time with it, the less I thought that was true. I think they were taking like info from like their day jobs at the listening post, because it's like uh, people are like, oh, they predicted that uh the Gulf War was coming.
Hmm.
And it's like, well, it was like a week before the Gulf War. I think you at a sensitive listening post in West Germany probably would have known or had a vibe.
Yeah.
Uh, but and then there's a lot of other prophecies. I'd have to pull them out.
It was
Uh,
being channeled through Ouija boards, right?
so that's what's interesting. It was like a mixture of things. Uh, Ouija boards is where they would get a lot, but they could also basically hypnotize one another and get further information. So some of the things came from Vance Davis was like one of the major players in this scenario, and he did this thing called Silva mind control.
Mm-hmm.
Have
Yeah,
you-
Ben
Love
talked about
Silva.
that on an episode.
I tried it. Yeah.
Does it work?
It's very strange, but yeah. No, yeah, I think it works. I don't know if it works like it works,
I think it
but
worked, dude.
Yeah.
You were different.
it worked a little bit. I was different. Yeah, I was happier.
Yeah.
Right.
No, but yeah.
And
So
a
he was
pep
doing
in your
Silva mind
step.
control. That's
Well, he,
crazy.
he he claimed that through Silva he could basically put himself in a state that would allow him to make the same kind of contacts he could through a Ouija board.
Right.
And yeah, so he was the main guy in this whole scenario. He wrote a book about it, which is a very interesting read. Like uh and I'm trying to think where the story goes after that.
Mm.
What was the book called?
It's called Unbroken Promises,
Oh shit.
a true story of courage and belief.
That's heavy
That
stuff.
could be about anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that wasn't very good at like advertising for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Gulf Race 6. But yeah, he's basically the only one that's talked about it in the years since. And my goal throughout this entire project was to try to talk to one of the other five.
Hmm.
No such luck. I don't think any of them want to talk about it at all.
Mm.
And
Huh.
uh, apparently, supposedly Vance Davis listened to. I did some episodes on Program to Chill about the Gulf Breeze 6,
And he
and
listened to it.
apparently he listened to them and said
Wow.
we got it essentially accurate. So that's
Damn.
nice.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, I talked to people like tangential to it, but never the other five.
It's pretty weird.
And
I mean, they were. How did they recover them? Like when they were AWOL.
oh, so basically a SWAT team after one of them was pulled over with a broken tail light.
Shit, that's crazy.
It was like they were worried that they had sensitive documents or were like planning some kind of terrorist thing. I think I think Davis mentioned that some of the FBI agents that arrested them thought they were like Earth First Battalion or something like that, but I don't know if there's any proof to that.
Well,
Um, and yeah, they are in custody for a while, but it becomes clear that they don't have any confidential secret documents on them. They were under the impression that they did because they had like a dossier of documents from Bill Cooper, and an, some other documents from a lady in I think France who gave them Ashtar Sharan documents.
it's a good
Uh,
mix.
Yeah, but but they thought some of the Cooper stuff I think was like top secret. I'm sure the MJ12 documents were in there,
Nice.
just
yeah.
given the time period.
Then they were just like, "Oh, this is all bullshit. This is Bill Cooper we're talking about."
Wait, are you
Uh,
kidding? Just the intro gets me hyped, man. I'll
no,
ride it.
he's
I'll ride
great,
down the Antichrist here in that intro. You know.
but I don't
Well,
think he had serious. Did he have serious documents?
apparently there were rumors that they either thought that Bill Cooper was the Antichrist, because they went to Florida and they thought he was at the MUFON conference being held in Gulf Breeze. I don't think he was at the conference, and they arrived a few days too late. The
Huh.
other suspected Antichrist was Ed Walters of the Gulf Breeze
Yeah.
sightings, basically. Don't think there was any truth to that one. Uh, Vance Davis has said the Antichrist is already on Earth,
Hmm.
I think, is involved with maybe the United Nations in Europe, and is known as the man who wears the blue turban.
Oh, brother, that's cool. Yeah,
Hmm.
that would be a great candidate for it. But I feel like we're not living in a world where the Antichrist is going to be a cool guy in a blue turban. It's
That's
going to be
yeah.
like,
That's like a
Yeah.
70s B-real flick.
yeah,
It's definitely that it gives me shades of the Nine story. Because if you read the Stuart Holroyd book on the Nine, they're getting led all over the planet, like trying to stop global annihilation.
Yeah, well, it always makes me. This is why I've always been worried to like use a Ouija board myself. I was listening to some episode you guys did, and I think you called people who didn't use them weenies or something
No
like
way,
that.
dude. We had our whole shit ruined on a Ouija board, and it's
Oh,
Yeah,
did you?
yeah.
we summoned the man.
We'll recap that in short on the Patreon teaser, but also double teaser for our Patreon print club. We include like a bonus item with our Journal of Shells, and this one is actually a fold out Ouija board with
Yeah, yeah.
Oh
a plan
no!
yeah, a planchette that you
It's
can
on its
cut
way
out
to you right now.
yourself.
Oh
So
no!
this could get real dicey, dude.
Yeah.
I'll put it away somewhere where it can't hurt me.
Keep it folded up, man. But I do love, like, I don't know, like there's something untouchable about the Ouija board where people will be like, I don't believe in any of this shit, but I'm not touching that. And that always
Mm.
like,
Yeah.
but it's fucked up shit does happen when you use it. I don't know. I don't really get it, but
I'll say I'm not that hypocritical because I am suspicious of any channeling just because I'm always I've seen so many cases like that, like questing being led all over the place. And I always think back to like George Hansen's The Trickster and the Paranormal.
Sure.
And
absolutely.
you never know what's talking through the channeling. You don't know what's talking through the board. And
I do.
Even your own
Shakespeare.
damn, like your own suggestibility of like giving up rationality and routine to a narrative that's superimposed on your life, like even if it's just that, I mean, that has so much power in itself, I think.
yeah. No,
Um,
no, it definitely does.
and yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've seen, I've definitely heard you talk about Hellier, but you kind of see that whole thing played out on Hellier in a very benign way because they have like the self-awareness of filming a documentary. But I think you could see that the precursor to some kind of more maniacal quest there. Maybe if there wasn't cameras and they were different people or different circumstances, like a few context clues and synchronicities can lead you to strange places.
Yeah, well, it's like I don't want to sound like the like chick track Dark Dungeons guy that, you know, uh Dungeons and Dragons is going to turn you into one of Satan's army. Uh I do I it's probably more of a personal thing, but I like to be like in control of my own consciousness, my own self. So I think I'd
Yeah,
have
yeah.
trouble even like attempting to channel something. Um, but yeah, I do see like the potential in it for like fun, at least.
It is fun. Uh, I've had like I don't know if I ever talked about it on the show. Probably. I had like only one really bad experience with, and I have not done this stuff much, but like just using like a Black Mirror with no goal was a very
Mm,
horrible experience. I think
Mm.
just having a goal and boundaries and intention is pretty much all you need, and you're probably safe. Like, I think we have more, if any of this is real, which what well, who cares? It's like if any of it's real, I think we have more power than like people think, as long as you're careful and intentional about it. That's just how I feel today. Sometimes I'm like,
right.
you shouldn't mess with what you don't understand.
Hmm.
But I mean, we're part of it too. That's like why the UFO thing is so interesting, is because, but we're part of this, terrible mystery. So we should be able to interact with any part of it, really, without fear. I mean, of course, there are exceptions to this, but I don't think we should be afraid of something because it's unknown,
Mhm.
necessarily.
Yeah.
Right. No,
But,
I mostly side with that. So one of the things I constantly run into with my specific analysis is that people assume I'm doing debunking, which I would shudder to think of that. Uh, descriptor. Uh, because I don't find the like material reality of the experience to be, something you can like come down on. Like I believe that something weird happened to Chris Bledsoe, and based on the like fine-tooth comb I used to look at his story, uh, I think some probably assume that I just think he's full of crap, but really I don't. If anything, I think it just proves like why witnesses, why experiencers should not talk to the military.
Mm.
But that's
Yeah.
just me.
Yeah, I don't think. Oh, I think if you look at, I mean, some people, if you look at their thing with any kind of critical eye, you're like a debunker, and you're just like, and it's almost like you're on the other team. But I don't think anyone who like seriously looks at your stuff would think of it as, the same as like who's the big UFO debunker who's written all those books?
There's so many. Phil
Mm.
Class is the
Yeah,
one I
Oh
Class.
always
yeah,
come
class.
across.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Donald
We're
Menzel.
we're still under the Phil Class curse, which is
Yeah.
you'll know it's something like I'm gonna butcher it, but he basically says you'll know nothing more about the UFO question than you did the day before, and something like that. And it's
Yeah.
true.
Damn
It's
right
true.
about that. Yeah, yeah,
He's
So that's
cursed us
like
all.
good.
yeah.
I feel like, I mean, I like, but I'm also, maybe it's sort of a perverse, like, the poetic or sort of mystical aspect of it, where it's an unsolvable question, and it's probably like just a detour that we don't need to be taking. But
Well,
that part of it
it's
is like that's where the magic is.
it's a mirror, right? Like you project into
Yeah.
it. That's what makes it so profound, and it generates all of this mythology and folklore. And I think that's why it's also so useful to the military, to the intelligence
Yeah.
community, to people broking power in all kinds of different directions, because it's such a potent arena for mythopoetic things, for I don't know, emotional attachment, like for uh people who can be manipulated, all kinds of shit like that, right? I mean,
Yeah. It's similar to music in that way, I guess. Like the music industry and scene. Uh,
damn dude.
People develop these these sort of hyper intense bonds to it because they put their energy and emotion into it. Like, yeah,
Start
it's not
talking about how
exactly the same.
Nirvana was a psyop.
Not Nirvana, but not Nirvana. Maybe uh no, I don't know. I couldn't think of a good.
Britpop. That's the good
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, there you go.
Britpop was like the last gasp of the British intelligence trying to do a 1960s again. Yeah.
The bank accounts were getting emptied.
Like, well, this bloke, he'll work, right?
Yeah.
And it's like
That's all we can afford.
so the Oasis brothers.
Yeah. Um,
Uh,
another connection back to the Law of One stuff real quick, because I don't know how familiar you are with that, but I
Uh,
have.
I'm vaguely familiar. I do have this cool book that I just wanted to do show and tell with. Uh,
Oh,
oh yeah,
Sassarian
fuck yeah, that's
that is
extraterrestrial.
cool.
beautiful.
Yeah. And I read through some of it. I think it's some early channeling that Elkins did. I don't know when the
Huh.
Law of One was written, but this is like starting in 58.
That's super early,
Oh,
yeah, because Law of One's not till what, late 70s, right?
it's like yeah, 70s, 80s. Wait, when did he die? By homicide. If you Google his name, he died by
Yeah,
homicide.
his quest did not end well.
He
Yeah, it
died in
didn't.
And there
84.
were like their whole thing is a crazy quest. But I was actually going to ask you about the psychic surgeon, Dr.
Mhm.
Arrigo of the Rusty Knife.
You know,
Because in looking through your stuff, I found it interesting that Fuller of the Betty and Barney Hill stuff was connected to Arrigo. Puharich went down there, and so did Don Elkins. Apparently, Don Elkins had
Really?
surgery.
I thought
By
Carla
way,
did too.
Carla had apparently had a kidney removed and
And
split
put
in half, and then put back in by Dr. Arrigo.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
See, Arrigo's always struck a chord with me because I think like obviously I've spent a lot of time with like the allegation that the Villas-Boas abduction was done by the CIA.
yeah.
I've looked into the guy who claimed that, Botsko Nedeljkovic, and that's a whole other side tangent. But basically, I find it weird that Arrigo, the like spirit he's possessed by is a German doctor named Doctor. What do you guys remember? What doctor possesses him?
Not off
No
the top
clue.
of my head.
Think
And
of the
I'm
most
glad that I don't.
stereotypically German name you can think of.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
who's
yeah.
possessing him. And I've always found that like unsettling in like, 1950s, 60s Brazil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mengele was his name, I think.
Mingle. But another person who visited Origo was actually do you guy Leon Playfair?
Oh
Did
yeah.
did like
His
the
book was weird, right? He had that.
yeah, the
Yeah.
secret it's called like the secret cow or something like that.
Yeah, I've had a few of his. Yeah, that's a weird guy.
No, he's strange. I've always the reason he was in Brazil is because he was working for I think the wire service for USAID,
Hmm.
which USAID in Brazil in the 1950s and 60s isn't
Huh.
that was often used for like CIA operations, usually as a cover. USAID did actual aid, but that's why it was such a convenient cover. And I always
Right.
wonder,
Hmm.
because Bosco, the guy I wrote about too and claimed the Villas-Boas abduction was a CIA operation, was also a USAID employee.
Huh. Yeah.
Um,
You ever look into Armin Victorian?
a little bit. I've seen
Yeah.
John Lundberg's very short documentary,
It's
The
so good.
Mythologist.
Yeah. I love that movie, or that short film.
Mm.
Yeah.
He's like another guy, like the orchid smuggling and the mind control and the UFOs. I am endlessly fascinated by him. That kind of reminds me of like these men of mystery that,
Yeah.
pop up.
I've always wondered what happened to Armin Victorian. I
I
think
thought
by the
what
end of the Lundberg documentary, he was working at a grocery shop, right?
an Arby's or something. No, I don't
I
know.
don't know if it was an Arby's.
Yeah.
Uh, trying to think of like a play on words with Arby's and Armin Victorian, but it's not coming to
Yeah.
me.
Selling
Well,
rare roast beef.
yeah. We'll double down on that in the Patreon. We'll get there. Yeah, this guy, Guy Leon Playfair, he did a book on Uri Geller, too. The Flying Cow.
Oh, the flying cow. I was so close.
Yeah.
The secret cow is a worse title.
Because
The secret cow.
he's kind
That's
of
a
like
cool
a
title.
Hans Holzer type of just like all over the board a little bit.
Yeah, he was specifically doing work on the infield poltergeist. The reason why I'm so familiar with him is because I looked into like Ghost Watch, like the 1990s BBC found footage thing that scared everybody half to death because they didn't know it was fake.
Yeah.
And he served as like a consultant on that, basically. And I found it interesting because like a few years previously, he wrote a book on like the negative effects of television on children, and like television is like a psychic, ill.
That's
Uh,
demented. They're like, so yeah,
and then
let's put this
and
to
then
work.
he's like, you know what? I'm going to do so much psychic damage just to prove my point.
That's sick. Cool. I think we're about in an hour. I think that's a good place to jump over to Patreon for a bit and let's squeeze some more stuff in. Thanks for listening to the public portion of this episode. Our full episode archive, regular exclusive episodes, written content, and more is at patreon.com/consensusunreality for just $5 a month. There is also our print club tier. You'll receive our Journal of Shells. We're on our 4th volume. There's like 45 pages in that sucker. And it comes with a Ouija board, which you may or may not want to have your life ruined with. So, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time. Patreon people.
Delaying the outro yet again.
Yeah. All right, let's get the hell out of here. Thanks again. That was amazing. I guess I'll edit this into the public episode as well, but definitely check out the Substack. Give us the link real quick.
You can just go to gettingspooked.com.
There you go. Simple.
I'm very excited that I bought that domain name.
Yeah,
it's great, man. I mean, I couldn't believe like just how both prolific you are and also the way that you're hitting it from different angles. Like, I love the audio reads. I think that's incredible. The research is incredible. So everybody listening to this, check that out. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.